So I would like to introduce our speakers. There's a panel. So we'll have Dr. Teresa Seeman, who is an Associate Vice Chair at the Department of Medicine for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and Professor of Medicine and Epidemiology at UCLA. Her research focuses on the role of social and psychological factors in patterns of aging. Dr. Seeman developed and initiated the Generation Xchange program in Los Angeles. Then we also have Deanne Morris and Don Purnell, who are co-directors of GenX alongside Dr. Seeman. They play a key role in the recruitment and retention of school relationships and program volunteers. Mrs. Morris oversees the day-to-day operations for GenX, recruitment and training of older adults. She has extensive experience in community engagement programs, having served as the primary health officer for the LA Urban League prior to joining GenX. Mrs. Purnell serves as the GenX liaison with LAUSD, drawing on her experience with educational programs. Prior to joining GenX, Mrs. Purnell served as a lead for LA Urban League educational activities. GenX is a program that aims to promote greater health and wellness outcomes in at-risk older adults, while simultaneously supporting greater academic and behavioral outcomes for children in grades kindergarten through third grade. So we're really excited to hear more about this program and their experience in the community. I have third graders, twins, boy and a girl. So I know that it really takes a village, and I really know, that the role that older adults play on the formation of my children is really important, and I really praise them for their work with this program. So I will let them, I think they're all virtual, right? So we will let Dr. Seeman to get us started. Welcome, and then we'll alternate with the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Sorry we couldn't make it in person. We're doing this presentation while Dawn and I are also participating in the annual meeting for another project that we work on together. But always really exciting to be able to talk about Generation Exchange, which is our team's passion. As noted, this is a program that really tries to leverage intergenerational relationships to promote health for older adults and education for the kids. And just to start us off, we're going to play a brief video that I think really does a nice job of introducing you beyond us, but really to our participating GenX team members, the school participants, and sort of gives you the flavor of what we're trying to do. So let me try to do the video at this point, and we will see how that goes. Okay. I'm going to try resharing my screen. There we go.
I feel like I know somebody's counting on me, and I know that somebody knows that I can do it. When I grow up, I want to be good at everything that I do and get a good education.
Generation Exchange is a program that brings together older adults with elementary school children, grades kindergarten through third grade. And the goal is to provide a benefit to the kids in terms of better educational outcomes for them, with also a similar benefit to the older adults in terms of better health outcomes for them.
What we want to do is, what can we do to make change? Every day we get different stories about how they enjoy the program, how it makes them feel.
I can't think of anything else that gives me more pleasure than what I'm doing now. That's after almost 50 years of working. I think I learn as much from them as they learn from me. So I get to be exposed to something that I don't have any other chance to be exposed to.
we bring the older adults to the school. They're trained to provide 10 hours a week working with the kids. And in particular, we focus on grades K through third grade because those are critical grades for kids when they need to learn how to read.
It's good because like you have somebody to help you when you need help. She will walk around and then she would like help me and help other people. It makes me feel like I can always count on someone to help me.
With all the cutbacks we hear that go on in schools, and knowing that we can have another adult in there to assist is beneficial. But you also see the development of relationships between the children and your Generation Exchange volunteer. They always want to know when they're going to be there, and when they're not there, they ask about them.
When we have students that may need that little bit extra, that extra grounding, that extra ear, they are there and able to provide their support in a wonderful, wonderful way.
When they told me about it, I was excited. I was like, okay, this is something that we can use. It's exceeded my expectations.
Everyone who's joined has stayed for multiple years now. All of our volunteers talk about how committed they are to the kids. You see that impact you make. You see the changes in them when they start to bloom. That is worth more than any compensation, just to see them succeed. Every time when I like stumbled on a word, she helped me and she helped me read fluently. Because if you keep reading, that's how you can get better and better and better. My dream is that we are able to use the reputation we're building with the principal and our volunteers and some of our funders to actually secure a larger amount of funding that would allow us to put the program into additional schools.
There are many things that you can invest your charity dollars in, and Generation Exchange is one of the best. We see an immediate result, and that's very satisfying to us. It will have a tremendous impact on these children as they grow up and become good citizens.
Generation X just spoke to us. It sounded like a wonderful idea, and we're just very happy with what's happening.
Their life becomes a part of yours. What they do, what they strive for, what their dreams are, you're able to be a part of that.
If you want to be a doctor, if you want to be like a scientist, or if you want to be a teacher, you can be all that you can be if you just go to school.
Well, that is, I think, the best introduction we can give you to GenX, but we'll try to share just a little bit more about what we're up to these days and give you some of the data that we've been able to collect. Oh, dear. Sorry about this. I tried this on my computer and didn't have any trouble, but let me just move to the next one here and try it this way. Okay. Nope. Okay. Try it now. All right. So as the video tries to outline, this program is really all about intergenerational relationships and trying to leverage the talent and experience of older adults to address unmet needs and create a greater social good, to basically offer a role that continue into retirement years where older adults are providing fulfilling a need that provides a really valuable commitment and contribution to our communities. And to do that, we bring together these adults age 50 and older with elementary school kids. And as we've said, and the video reiterates, really our goals are twofold. One is we'd like to support better outcomes for the kids in terms of education and really social behavioral outcomes, as well, as you'll hear when my colleagues talk a bit more about the program and what we're finding, but also trying to ensure that we promote health outcomes for the adults who volunteer in this program. Whoops. So the model that we follow is we recruit these older adults to serve in elementary schools in grades K through 3rd grade. And really those grades are our focus, or at least have been to date. You'll see at the end, we're starting to expand into 4th and 5th grade now. But we really started with K through 3rd grade because those are the grades where kids really have to get sort of their basic reading and math skills under their belt in order to be able to succeed as they move forward beyond that. We've deliberately structured this program so that our volunteers are asked to take on meaningful roles, doing tutoring and mentoring and fulfilling important needs in the school. We explicitly train them and we orient our teachers. We are not putting people in the classroom to do grading or filing. We want our older adults to really have that relationship with the kids and to really feel that they're making an important contribution to outcomes for these kids. So interacting with the kids in a regular and ongoing way. We require a commitment of a minimum of 10 hours a week for the full school year. The goal here is to provide a high intensity dose, both for our older adults, so that they're really getting the engagement with the school that we think promotes the social, cognitive, physical benefits for them. But likewise, we provide a high intensity dose for the kids. So the older adults are there on a regular basis. They become a regular member of the classroom and they build the kind of relationships with the kids that they can be more effective in their tutoring and mentoring. We also put a critical mass of GenX volunteers in each school. We try to cover all of the classrooms in K through 3rd grade, a minimum of 10 people in each school to form a team. The idea is that they are a sufficient presence in the school to be a recognized entity. They meet once a week as a team so that they build a sense of team membership, being part of a larger organization. It's a place where they can share both their challenges and their successes with the kids, and just build these social relationships as a member of the GenX team at that school. As I mentioned, they're in the schools all year long. We do our training usually in early to mid-September. People go into classrooms at that point, and they're in the classrooms all the way through to June when school gets out. And this whole model is designed to provide health promotion for these adults in terms of the physical activity that's required, participate on a regular basis to get to the school, to be moving around in the classroom and on campus. It's highly social, not only with their team members, but with the teachers and the kids, and it's cognitively stimulating. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dawn Purnell, to talk a little bit about the community that we work in and the schools and the kids that we work with.
Thank you, Teresa. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. If you haven't already gathered from some of what Teresa's already shared, we're very strategic about what we do. And part of that was identifying schools that really could utilize the program due to being underserved and or under-resourced. So we strategically outlined and focused our efforts initially on the South Los Angeles area, particularly the Crenshaw-Dorsey feeder pattern. And that was for particular reasons, as we've outlined here. So in this region in particular, nearly 25% of the LAUSD schools in this area are chronically underperforming, meaning that their test scores are below standards or below state level standards of what they should be. Students in this area, about 40% are living in foster care and or kinship care, not with their parents of origin. Nearly 50% of students are living under the poverty line. Less than 30% of adults over the age of 25 have a high school diploma, and students are 5 times more likely in this area to be exposed to traumatic violence or some sort of post-traumatic stress inducing situation. So we had started with one school and quickly moved on to other schools in the area. We began with 54th Street Elementary, which you can see here, and then moved on to, where did we move on to? We moved on to 5974th. We're now at also Windsor, LaSalle, and Baldwin Hills Elementary. So you can see the geographic region. We are definitely within the Crenshaw-Dorsey feeder pattern and squarely in South Los Angeles. And with regard to the schools and how the schools themselves look, you can see by this chart where we are in terms of the percent of students that are socioeconomically disadvantaged, the number of students that are the percent of the population that is African American, as well as Hispanic and Latino. Additionally, we outlined here the percent of students within each school that are not meeting literacy benchmarks, which means that they are either not recognizing letters and or basic sounds, blends, or traditional reading comprehension at the targeted grade level. So as you can see here, all of our schools, for the most part, have a large percentage, more than half of their students that are not meeting literacy benchmarks.
Deanna is going to take over at this point and talk to you a little bit now about the people who volunteer in our program.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here. We are happy to be here to share our experience and our passion for Generation Exchange. So part of the main thing of Generation Exchange is recruitment. We try to target volunteers that live in or around the schools that we have identified as schools of need. Recruitment is done we started off with word of mouth. And we know that really works best because somebody that knows somebody, and we all know the best volunteers are people that volunteer all the time. We volunteer, we find groups through churches, health fairs, senior centers, Black clubs, libraries, through social media, through our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And we try to ask all of our volunteers to always be on the lookout for people that they know that might have interest. Folks that have retired and say they're bored and they want something to do. And we are currently, 3 years ago, 2 of our volunteers that have been in the program for quite a while came together and formed a marriage. But we tell people that it's not something that we guarantee. That just happened to happen. So don't come looking for a husband or a wife because that's no guarantee. But we do have a couple that were our original GenX volunteers that did get married. Again, we're looking always for, one of the things we're looking for right now are more men. We've had quite a few at one time, but for about 3 years. What we have done, we are adding this fall, we're adding 4th and 5th grade, and we figure that will allow us to get more men. Most men really don't like kindergarten, 1st grade, because that's kind of that touchy-feely kind of, they have to have that. Most men don't have that, but they do really well with older kids. The men that we've had always had 3rd grade classes, 3rd or 4th grade, or 2nd, 3rd or 4th. So this year we're adding 4th and 5th, and we're hoping that will increase some of our recruitment. This week in LA Sentinel, this week and last week, we have put an ad in for an article that we wrote about GenX Exchange and the work that we've been doing. But also we have a ad in there about our recruitment flyer in the LA Sentinel also. Next. So our training, what we do for Generation Exchange, everyone that comes to the program have to attend a mandatory 5-day training. And now we've added a 6-day because we've added so many people. But also each year we find out what else our volunteers want us to cover during that 1-week training. Training is 5 days, 9 to 4. And we look at program structure, the goals for the year. We bring in teachers from LA Unified that cover math and reading for kinder through third grade. This year, we're bringing in someone that's going to cover fourth and fifth grade. We bring in someone from LAUSD and from UCLA that give us training on English language learners. And we have someone, a consultant that was a previous teacher at our first school, and now she works through LA Unified as a coordinator for managing disruptive behavior. So she will also be joining us this year for our training. Next. So this graph kind of tells us where we started. We did a pilot with another school, Angeles Mesa, in 13, 14, like 5 months, just to kind of get our feet wet and see if we liked it. And we just fell in love and just went for it the next year. Our funders were so pleased with us in 5 months. After 5 months, they funded us for a year. So that's when we started our full year in the schools. So you can see how we have increased our volunteers each year. And right now we're close to 20,000 volunteer hours that our volunteers have put in. I think Teresa mentioned they are required to do a minimum of 10. I don't have one volunteer that do 10 hours. They all do more than 10 hours a week because once they get in the classroom, the kids really, the trust of the kids and them falling in love with the kids, they really enjoy that. Next. So one of the things that we had to do, which all of us probably in that room had to do in 2019, we had to pivot from indoor stuff to outdoor or not at all. We had to figure out, so how are we going to address GenX when our volunteers are used to being in the classroom, one-on-one with their kids in person. So we had to pivot to doing online Zooming, which caused us, our volunteers, some of them, they're seniors, and to go from flip phones to iPhones. So that was a challenge because, they weren't used to all of that, but they are so happy. So not only did they learn how to do Zooming online with GenX, they also learned how to Zoom with their family members, and they're doing birthday parties and happy hours and weekend kinds of things with their family, monthly and weekly. So that has been exciting. So what we did, we brought volunteers together in a tent outside with social distancing, and everybody had masks and hand sanitizer and gloves, where we did one-on-one training on Zoom in person. And we got some funding. Teresa found funding where we got laptops, hotspots, and headphones for all our volunteers that didn't have them. And some of the volunteers just needed upgraded laptops, so we provided them with laptops, and they were able to work in the classroom, because remember, everything went from being in person to going on Zoom. So our teachers, our volunteers learned how to do breakout rooms. So they were put in breakout rooms, either small groups, one-on-one, to do group instructions, things that the teacher had asked them to do. Also, they were like the extra set of eyes. That was something that they did when they were in person, but even on Zoom, because the teacher back us to the class, he or she's trying to direct the class in one direction, you still have people in Zoom on the chat talking to each other or playing with their dog or their siblings. So our volunteers are able to go in and kind of get them to be quiet, sit down, let the dog go, and just pay attention to their teacher. And also they were able to put their teachers into maybe it would be a corner, but in a separate Zoom where they cannot disrupt the others' kids. That we were able to do during that time of training.
You want to finish out with this one, Deanne, from this
Okay.
year?
So then what we did after, LA Unified didn't allow anyone on the campus when they did go back last year. So what we were able to do, some of our participants continued to do one-on-one reading to the classrooms, like until last week, they were reading to the classrooms 2 or 3 times a week. Here we have one of our volunteers. They started going to the campus and reading to the kids who were brought outside, and they would come in and read to their class outside. We had volunteers that a couple of our volunteers at one of our schools, they have large steps in the front of their school. So the teachers brought the kids to the front of the school and set them on the outside of the school on the steps. And we had volunteers to actually read to the kids in. And one of the things that we found, not only did our volunteers miss being on that one-on-one with the kids, but the kids missed the volunteers. They wrote letters to them, sent notes by their teachers, send them text messages, when are you coming back, we miss you. So there is definitely a bond that we know is needed, and that is why we continue to do what we do.
All right, thank you, Deanne. So the next thing we were hoping to do here is to just give you a sense of some of the outcomes that we were able to assess pre-COVID, and then I also want to give you some data from during the pandemic, when we were able to collect some data online. But before the pandemic, we actually would do data collection in person, and we were able to do some measurements of health parameters, including blood pressure, walking speed, things like that. And this slide just shows you a selection of our results. The green and red bars, which you can see trending down, are looking at changes in blood pressure on average between the baseline, which is when they come in for training. So they haven't been in the schools yet. And then June at the end of the year, their first 9 months in the program. And we see, not everyone shows a decline, but we do see an average decline in blood pressure over that 9-month period in our cohort. We also see that they're doing 5 sequential chair stands and walking a 4-meter walk faster by the end of the year. Again, the bars going down, indicating they've completed those tasks more quickly by the end of the year. In terms of the social aspects of the program, everyone tells us they make new friends, and actually the average number is 11. I think that's because this program is so social. There's not only all the other Gen Xers at the school, but the teachers and other staff members who they get to know. And 40% of them meet with these new friends from the teams outside of school. So this isn't just an increase in social engagement within the school, they're also then taking these relationships outside. 100% of our volunteers report an improved sense of well-being and that they feel like they're doing something important and contributing to the kids' success, as you heard in some of the comments in the video. And we hear this every year. This is why people stay. During COVID, obviously we were not collecting a lot of these health data that require in-person contact, but we were able to do online surveys because all of our folks have improved their computer skills immensely by doing all the Zoom classroom connections that they did during the 2021 school year. So one of the things we assessed was people's reports about loneliness. And what this slide is showing you, the red bar is comparing what those reports looked like in spring of 2020. So that's when they had just gone home and the pandemic was really ramping up and everybody was trying to figure out what this was going to mean to our lives. And we're comparing the reports of loneliness at that point to what they had reported the year before at that same time of the year. So in spring 2019. And what you can see is the spring 2020 reports of loneliness are significantly up, not surprisingly. But the yellow bar, I think, is also very intriguing. This is looking at levels of reported loneliness in the spring of 2021. So we're still in the pandemic. They've just spent a whole year working remotely with their classes. So some engagement, but not in person. And what you can see is if you compare those levels of loneliness to what they were in the spring of 2019, when everything was in person, they're still elevated, but they're not as high as they were in 2020. So I was encouraged by this, that our training to be on Zoom, to be engaged through those mechanisms, even while maintaining social distance in terms of physical contact, does seem to have at least brought some of those loneliness levels down from what they were in 2020. Likewise, we did some assessments of social well-being. And again, the red bar is comparing levels reported at that first spring of 2020 to what they had been the previous spring, and you can see social well-being dropped. The green bar shows you how social well-being looked at the end of 21 versus what it looked like in 20, and it's gotten better. And then the yellow bar, like the previous slide, shows you what social well-being looked like in the spring of 21 versus what it had been when we were back in person in 2019. So still down from that level, but again, not as bad as it was in spring of 2020. So I think on some of the psychological measures, we were at least able to show that staying engaged in GenX, even if it was remote via Zoom, does seem to have had some mitigating effect on psychological parameters. In terms of children's outcomes, we really only have pre-COVID measures. We tried to collect some information from teachers, but as you can imagine, as anyone on this at this meeting who's a parent knows, teachers have had a really rough ride, just like the rest of us, if not rougher, during 2021 and 21-22. We tried collecting data in 2021 and teachers were just so swamped, so stressed, we finally said, you know, this is just not viable. But we did have some encouraging pre-COVID results that I wanted to share. So teachers were reporting evidence of increased performance from the kids on letter recognition, sounding out words and reading, improved classroom engagement and behavior in the classroom, increased percentage of classroom time spent on task, and improved attendance with a decrease in office referrals. And the teachers' reports of office referrals definitely are in line with what we're hearing from our principals, who also report evidence, you know, clear evidence that office referrals are down for classrooms that have GenX. And we're currently in discussions with our contacts at LAUSD about really beefing up our assessment of student outcomes, trying to explore what other kinds of data we might be able to get that would allow us to document the ways in which we seem to be impacting positively on kids. Dawn, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about some of the other kind of unexpected benefits that we've been seeing? You're muted.
Yep, just saw that. So we knew from Dr. Seeman's previous work that we were definitely going to have impacts on students and their academic outcomes and volunteers and their health-related outcomes. But there were some nice, warm and fuzzy, unexpected benefits that we found by engaging in the program. One of them is that our program was able to help build stronger ties within the community. Now, I mentioned before about us being strategic. We knew that many of the schools in our communities were disconnected from their communities. Students who lived in the local area typically didn't go to the schools that were in their immediate catchment area. They went to schools further west. So parents weren't aware of necessarily what was going on in the schools, right? Nor some of the resources, the schools aware of some of the resources that were available to the local community. So by bringing volunteers directly from the school community, those volunteers were able to bring resources back into schools and vice versa. So we knew that there was a need, didn't know how quickly we would begin to see some of those benefits of those strong ties. And it's evidenced in the fact that we've got some community members or some volunteers who have developed block clubs, other volunteers who have directed resources from our local public libraries to schools, including the donation of books and field trips and homework help assistance and bridging those connections for schools, and several other things. Increased engagement with LAUSD district leadership. We know that success has many mothers, but we just didn't realize how, much that the district would embrace us, just really, really loving on our program. I think it's just a testament to how great our program is, how much of a win-win-win it is, given all of the impacts that it has on everyone that surrounds it. Other benefits included the integration of our GenX team members in schools. As Deanne mentioned, none of our volunteers did or do 10 hours. They always exceed the standard amount. And that has to do with the fact that Our volunteers are really incorporated into the fabric of the schools. We have volunteers that have made costumes for Christmas pageants, played the piano for end of the year celebrations, participate in field trips, go to school plays, after hours, on weekends. There's really a level of ownership that our volunteers take on with their schools, and their schools take on with them. We've had some quite heated conversations with teachers who were very adamant about us not taking their volunteers, that they might even cause bodily harm to us. Kidding, but kidding, but not kidding. They're very serious about their teachers and their volunteers. The other thing is, as I mentioned, the strong ties with teachers around classrooms and personal life issues. We have had serious situations where teachers were going through some serious hardships, even physical illness, and our volunteers were actually able to provide assistance. In one case, we have a volunteer who is a cancer survivor who runs or helps to coordinate a monthly breast cancer screenings at her local church. And she invited her teacher to come, and her teacher was actually screened at one of those events and found out that she did indeed have breast cancer. And she was able to walk right alongside with her teacher, provide support, connect her to support groups, and was right there to welcome her after she had finished her treatment and was ready to return back into the classroom. And there are tons of other examples of this nature, but that bond that they have, we've heard teachers refer to volunteers as aunts and uncles, be invited to weddings, baby showers, and all kinds of other things. There really is that tight bond. And then lastly, this highly valued, our volunteers are highly valued by principals and teachers. We had no idea that our volunteers were contributing to teacher retention. We heard from principals that the ability for our volunteers to resonate from a cultural and community, a local community aspect, really helped to draw the bridge between teachers who were not from that community, not from that area, not from that cultural designation, to the students that they were servicing. And in so doing, really provided teachers with the comfort, the support, and sort of the bridge that they needed to want to continue in the classroom. So we are super excited about these results, and also, as Teresa mentioned, looking for ways to document some of these more rigorously. Teresa, I'll pass it back over to you.
Okay. I'm trying to advance my slides, and oh, there we go. So looking forward to this coming year, we're really trying to address the fact that because of the pandemic, the students, there's just a significantly increased need for academic support, for remediation of the learning losses that these kids have experienced. We're in the process of working with our colleagues at LAUSD to actually implement some summer school support via GenX. There are a couple of our schools that are going to have summer school, and we are looking to have some of our GenX members maybe work over the summer. And then in this coming fall, we're adding a new school to hopefully engage with more students. We're adding 4th and 5th grades at all of our schools. And trying to explore also whether we may be able to offer the program after school or on weekends to have tutoring available then. But the last thing I just want to briefly mention, and I know we're coming up on the end of our time, is just a new module or component of GenX. We are going to be implementing a new NIH R01 randomized trial within GenX to test whether participation in GenX has beneficial impacts on gene expression, particularly in reducing pro-inflammatory activity and increasing antiviral activity. And this is based on a pilot that we did a couple years ago. And here are the results showing the changes in gene expression between baseline, again, before people got into the schools, to the end of that school year, so 9 months later. And you can see on the left-hand side, the segment of bars going downward, which is the pro-inflammatory genes. And then the bars going up are all the antiviral response genes. So for this newly funded R01, we're going to begin recruitment of about 30 to 35 new GenX participants each fall for the next 4 years. They'll be randomized either to immediate classroom participation, meaning they would go in September, October, versus delayed start at the middle of the year after Christmas in January, February. All groups will receive health promotion and will be collecting data at baseline, 3 months and 9 months to see if we can show whether participation in this program actually may improve antiviral response, which would be just incredibly exciting. So just wanted to close with a picture of our team, and our team is even bigger now. This is from 2017. We're now closing in on 60 people. And with the addition of our new folks, we're going to be closing in on 100 this coming year. So just want to thank you. We welcome questions, and just provided information here on the link to our video and how to contact any of us should you have further questions, or if you'd like to refer anybody who might like to participate in GenX. But thank you very much, and we're open for questions.
Well, thank you so much for the great presentation. This program is amazing. So we're open for questions. We're going to take like 5-10 minutes of questions. Please, those in the room, raise your hand. I'll be moderating those in the room. And then please, for those who are in Zoom, raise your question in the chat, and Gerard is going to tell me whenever someone from Zoom wants to ask something. Please make sure to interact with us. We also want to hear from you. So go ahead, Carol.
First of all, congratulations on this great work. I've been trying for 3 years to figure out a place to have you presented to us. So it's really special to hear about it today. I think in the geriatric and aging research, there are a lot of interventions that work well when the people who innovated, figured them out, and implemented them. And I just wondered if you could reflect a little bit on how you take something like this to scale in a place like the LA Unified, and what you really see as the barriers and promoters for taking it to scale and sustaining the program.
Yeah, that's a great question, Carol. And I think about it all the time, and it wakes me up at 2 in the morning because I want to grow it, but I'm not sure I know how to grow it. I think in thinking about it, I think the biggest challenge is, expanding the array of people who can do what Deanne and Dawn do. These guys are just amazing. Their ability to connect with both the older adults in these different communities and convince them that they want to join this effort. We get a lot of people who say, oh, 10 hours a week, I don't know if I can do that. And Deanne and Dawn can control them into trying it. And then, as they've said, everybody falls in love with kids, and then they're doing 20 hours a week. So I think, having that ability to reach out into the community and understand the communities so you can approach them in ways that allow you to sort of sell the program. And also with Dawn's connections to the schools. I feel like I lucked out in meeting both of them, because Dawn was able to connect us with a principal who was open to trying something like this. And then he's been a big sort of proponent of this. So I think it's sort of finding the other people who can join our team to reach out and move into other communities, other schools beyond South LA, which is where we've been operating. And I think we're kind of reaching the point where we need to do that, want to do that. And so I would certainly welcome any of you who've had experience scaling up other programs with advice on the kinds of things we should be thinking about so that we can do that successfully. I will say we did train one of our original GenX team members, finished her, some of you may know her. Oh God, I'm blocking on her name, Deanne, help me.
Cynthia?
No.
Cynthia? Alexis?
No, Nebraska.
Oh,
Kiana King.
Kiana King. She got her PhD and is now at the University of Nebraska, and she approached us about training some folks there to start a GenX program there. And we did train them right before COVID. And then things went on hold, but this spring we did a training of 5 GenX participants there, and I believe they've been in the schools. We haven't heard anything back. I'm thinking we should reach back and see how it went.
No, it's going well. I talked to her. They're doing very well.
Great, great. So we are beginning to think about how to help other interested parties do something like this elsewhere.
Thank you. So Kenrick, please.
Hi, this is Kenrick. So good to see all 3 of you on the video. And I'll say that I'm so excited to be the data safety monitor for this new R01. So
I forgot to mention that.
This data well, yes. And so I will bring you back when you have results, because I'm going to be seeing them, right, to share with this group. It's very exciting. Everything is very exciting. But I wanted to circle back to the issue of men. I think, as you know, I think a lot of these boys and girls probably don't necessarily have a male role model. And I think seeing a male in an academic position is critical. Plus, you want to be also able to show that you're seeing health effects in males too, right? To show that they are getting the same benefits. So I guess my question is, do you have a man on the recruitment guiding team? And A, and B, have you talked to the men who did it to see why they did it? Because I guess, I referred to you a patient who is a man who's 85 and his friends have died, and he would really benefit. But I think part of it is there's so many women, like the issue of making friends that you pointed out, it may not resonate as much with him. And so is there a way to kind of bring in a cohort of people who know each other, or maybe expand your 6 days, already 6 days, right? But to have a special day for men just to get together and kind of bond, to kind of bring, so you're not like one out of many people as the only man or only one of 2 men. So just some thoughts for you to consider.
Yeah, no, those are great. Go ahead, Deanne.
So I can start with that, Kendrick. We did do, after the first year, second year, we did a male focus group. So we pulled together some males that I knew in the community that have done community work, and just to talk about and had them look at the flyer, had them to give us some ideas of what they thought. The first thing they did was told us that the colors on the flyer were not good. And we didn't think they were girly. They were just green and white or something. And they suggested red, black, and white. And one of the key things that, we're so busy just doing the work is that the pictures on the flyer, we were recruiting males, but there was not a picture of a male. 2 pictures on the flyer were both females. And it was like, dang, why did we think of that, right? So anyway, so we got a lot of great information from that. And then what we've done with the volunteers that have, male volunteers that have left, so that helped us increase our male participation. Then we did get a group, I think 3 that had left, that were all firemen. They did like 3 years, 3.5 years apiece. One kind of decided to go back to work. One had some health issues. So things happen, and we understand that. But we have been meeting with them brought in other males as we brought in males for them to have a conversation. Don and I have taken them out to lunch, a group of them, just to talk about what would their needs be. So we are trying to do that. Still finding, because a lot of the males want to spend too much time on the golf courts, and they go in the morning. We need them in the mornings, okay? So anyway, that's just a little jokey joke that I have with the males, but we are working on that. But Kendrick, anything that you think that might help would be great. We did have a male one time, a lot of times, because in the household, sometimes males, they are so used to how they ran their household when their children were little. It's hard for them to try to pivot and say, okay, this is not my house. These aren't my kids or grandkids. And they had expectations that this is how these kids should act. And we have to meet our kids where they are. We can't judge them. We can't say, well, why are they coming to school and can't read and can't write? That's not our job. Our job is why we're there to help them do that. So those are the things that we identify when I'm recruiting, listening to what people are saying. And when we have our orientation, they have to go through orientation even before they get to training, where we kind of talk about those things. But that is a good idea of maybe just having a group male session after our weekly training, just with the males, of some of the expectations for them, what to expect.
Yeah, those were great suggestions, Kenrick. I wrote them down. So we'll come pick your brain again too.
Thank you. So we go for one more question in the room. Again, those in Zoom, if you want to raise a question, please do.
Hi, great presentation. I'm so excited to hear about your work. I've been thinking about the same thing to work with my seniors on a digital divide. Since COVID, the seniors were isolated, as we all know, but really sitting at our feet of our elders. Our children don't have elders in our homes, as you displayed in your stats. A lot of these are out of home. They're with external family members, and they don't have the same nurturing effect from grandparents. But these elders don't have little ones around them anymore. They're isolated. So the digital divide, this is why I want to do this digital divide, but I'm so excited, and I will ask the ones that are available that might want to come out, because they really have, there are some seniors that can be mobile, they can still elders, but we have some that really are only able to come to one spot, and they're still able to give back to our youth. I like the idea, and I think what Kenrick said was so important. The same thing with youth. I wanted to do ours with the 6th and 7th graders, because they're still very impressionable and still very able to give back. So I think what you're doing is vital for our community. I did have a question. Why didn't you go into Hillcrest Elementary School? Because that is very bad. Their statistics are terrible in that area. But I just wanted to ask that. And then as far as it goes into those males, we tried to do something with the churches with the men a long time ago, and around their health. So your strategies are really important, but I think the same thing what Kenway said, like bringing them to the table, getting their invite from the design of everything. And I'm glad you all did that with your focus group. But I just wanted to know, has any of them been able to tell you any ways in which you can recruit, or maybe they might not be good for maybe the after school program. Maybe they're only eligible to do stuff with male, something like the mentee mentor kind of thing with after school for the male children, or something even with the female. Maybe it's something designing for that Gen X group, is maybe tailoring a specialized program for that, that's because a lot of the males, especially minority males, they don't have access to a male. A lot of them don't have grandfathers or fathers in the home unless they're in foster care. They still don't have that too. So I'm just thinking maybe that might be that after care tailored program. They can help males and the boys that are in those schools.
You're muted, Dawn.
I'm muted. I can take this one. So let me start with Hillcrest Elementary. So we learned early on that there are certain parameters that we need to really sort of think through when thinking about our school. So we talked to the district, really wanted to make sure that we were identifying schools that met the need in terms of their academic testing, their scores, and some of those good things. But we realized not long after starting that we also needed to ensure that we had a real champion in the schools, and as far as leadership is concerned, right? And not just someone who's interested in having another program, but one that would show us through, following up with us and engaging with us, that they were really interested in having our program, as well as invested in making our program a part of the fabric of their campus. We found that it's the most successful there. So we are still looking at Hillcrest Elementary, but there were some other schools that sort of met that benchmark before Hillcrest Elementary School did. And one example, we had a principal who literally emailed us every other month for an entire year, asking us about whether or not our program was available and had additional funding to work with us. With regard to the second piece regarding our male volunteers and providing additional supports, I was going to say, and this is actually in addition or connection to the first question, is that Deanne and I have the privilege of coming from the Los Angeles Urban League, and working with a nonprofit. We have learned probably more than most the pitfalls of being all things to all people, and how when you are not authentic to who you are and what you can provide, how that impacts and sort of sullies the quality of the work that you were designed to do, and you do better than anybody else. And so one of the things that we found in this process is that we are good in our wheelhouse. And how we are successful in ramping up is that we have taken things in really small steps, tried to really work hard to perfect them and increase that naturally. So even the 4th and 5th grade enhancement, which we are doing this year, wasn't one that we entered into lightly. We actually did a pilot right before COVID. It didn't work so well. We said, okay, we need to iron out the kinks. And now we're coming back. And we only started that 4th and 5th grade with one school with 2 classrooms. So we have learned over time that we gotta, crawl, walk, run. And so if there is an extent to which after adding this new pilot where we're adding 35 new volunteers a year and a new school, that we can do that pretty soundly, then we may look into some other avenues in the way that you're talking about in terms of program design to support additional males.
Thanks. So I would say one more question from the room or Zoom, or we can wrap up if anyone, last question? You don't have anyone in Zoom, Gerardo? Do you want to read it in the microphone? Let's see.
It's a, let me see. So shout out to Ms. Aziza and Ms. Deanne for continuing work in the trenches day to day, building up on our communities, providing mentorship, and giving us role models to look up to. I know the earlier part of the today was dedicated to Dr. Loretta Jones, but I also want to acknowledge some other great ladies, not to leave anyone out. This includes pretty much everyone in this room, including Dr. Mangione, Carmen Reyes. For Kenrick's question about male role models, don't leave yourself out. Dr. Norris, Dr. Martins, Dr. Rick Baker too, many to mention, but kudos to everyone who was here today. It is great to see the work that is being done on the ground every day. Miss Loretta would be proud. Also Christina and Anais for the hard work. So wonderful closing comment.
Great, yeah, great comment. Yeah, so